Welcome to this week's edition of Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He, of course, is the founder of Mosley Wealth Management. I'm Rebecca Powers. Thank you for being with us as you are every week. It is wonderful to see you, Professor. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. So we call him the professor around the studios because he has been a teacher. He continues to teach and do education classes. He's also been a football coach at the top, highest national level. So we are so honored to have you, and we call you the professor because so many times I think developing a retirement plan is kind of that biggest piece of homework, and your passion is retirement specifically. And so many people who come into you say they regret not doing that in writing retirement plan much sooner.
You're absolutely right. Believe it or not, a football team never goes into a game and the coach stands on the sideline after the kickoff and then we've got the ball and says, well, I wonder what play we're going to call. Because they're always holding this sheet that usually is about 3 times that big, and that's their game plan. That's the play they're going to call at a certain situation, what they're going to do. If it's 3rd and 2, what they're going to do. If it's 4th and 1, it gives them a whole option number of plays to call there. I have no idea what the defense does because I was always the offensive coordinator, but I know there was always a play to call on the game plan, and we had written across the top of that, it's the game plan. When it comes to retirement, the sad thing is, so many people don't have a game plan.
Yeah.
They've never started. I've said this before on this show. Some people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation to Europe to celebrate their retirement than they do a 2 or 3 decade retirement. And it shows because of the fear and because of the anxiety that people have of, are we going to run out of money? Are we going to come short? Do we have a plan? When we get to 85, are we going to still be able to go to the grocery store if we go to Europe this year? And
Right.
Those kind of things are what goes into a plan.
And I think it's such a red flag if you are with an advisor, perhaps, I'm sure you trust, but if you do not have a plan in writing, you kind of compare it to a lumber yard. You wouldn't build a house without an architect and a blueprint, right, that you all look at. You need those tools, but it has to be with precision.
Right. We offer the opportunity at the end of this segment and at the end of the show, and several times you'll hear us offer the opportunity for you to raise your hand if we can help you. And by the way, my purpose for this show is for you to find value if you spend 30 minutes watching this show, for you to learn something, and then if we can help you, for you to reach out and come to us, okay? So when we have somebody come in, we say, bring your statements. And we get to talking, we start talking with them, and we say, do you have a plan? And they'll say, yes, I have a plan, and they'll send across the table their 401k statement or their IRA statement, and they'll say, this is my plan. And I want to lovingly say this, that's not a plan, that's a statement. Because a plan, as you're going to find out on this show, addresses like 6 major areas, and you probably heard some of these or felt some of these as you're going through and focusing on retirement. Income. Inflation, have you heard the word recently? Your investments, are they up, down, sideways? Taxes, are they going up? We know they're going up. We know the date they're going up. Healthcare, are we going to be able to survive in retirement and have the our healthcare needs taken care of? And then legacy, leaving it. Those are the 6 elements of a real retirement plan. And Rebecca, I can search those 401k statements and I never find them. They're not there because those are statements, like you said, they're what we call the lumber yard that you can build a great retirement plan out of, but it's not a retirement plan.
Absolutely. Okay, so the first thing when you come into Mosley Wealth Management is to really get to know you. They'll ask you a whole bunch of questions because Tom and his group are the opposite of a big box approach. This is holistic. So you tell people, dream big. So your assignment now is picture your perfect retirement. If you had a magic wand, what would it look like? And then you reverse engineer that. What do you want your plan to look like, right? That's the first step.
Exactly. I mean, when those statements come across the table and we get started with our first appointment, we call it an envision appointment where we get a vision for where they are. We say, we'll get to those. But first of all, what does retirement look like for you? Now, I'm going to tell you, I've had some great illustrations of people who have different retirements. I'm talking to married people right now. If you're single, it may be somebody that you're going through retirement with, a partner or a friend, and you just plan on taking trips with them, living with them, doing whatever you want to do with them. If you're married, hopefully you plan on taking trips with them, living with them, doing all of those things. But you've got to get on the same page as to what retirement looks like. It's called compatibility, okay? The best story is I had a couple came in from here in Southern California, came into the office. This was like 10 years ago. And they came in and they were sniveling at each other. And if you've got kids, I've got 5, if you know what sniveling is all about. And I said, what's going on? I'll call them George and Myrtle. And George says, well, it's her. I said, well, what's wrong with Myrtle? And he says, she wants to travel. Well, 90% of the people want to travel in retirement. And I said, well, what do you want to do, George? And I've almost got this down word for word. He said, well, my idea of traveling is traveling down on Tuesdays and Thursdays to the 7-Eleven and buying lottery tickets and a case of beer and coming home and watching Western movies on channel 607, okay? It's where the Bonanza reruns are, and my favorite, The Rifleman, okay? You got to get on the same page.
Yeah.
And I was able to help this lady get plugged into a group of ladies who traveled.
Oh, nice.
And he was able to stay home.
Oh, my gosh. So you're a marriage counselor now, too.
I did that in a previous career.
As a pastor.
That's right. So, but one of the biggest things, but you got to ask yourself a question. Do we want to travel? Okay, so they came in a year later for the annual review. It's really funny. They came in, they were like a couple of lovebirds, and I said, tell me about your past year. And George said, well, I'll take care of this, like he wouldn't anyway, he'd be the one to lead. And he says, Myrtle went with that group you plugged her into to New Zealand and Australia for 3 weeks, and she just got back from Europe for 2.5 weeks. And he said, I had 5.5 weeks this year where nobody told me I was doing anything wrong, okay? So you've got to get on the same page. What does it look like? Are you going to travel?
Yeah.
Are you going to volunteer? I have clients who they schedule twice a year a missionary trip because that's what their interest.
Right.
And that's where they want to spend their money. They want to go and they get to do 2 things. They get to go see the world and they get to go help somebody. I have clients who are in the medical profession and they go on a medical tour to Africa or South America.
Wow.
Or somewhere in Asia every single year. But you've got to get a picture of what it looks like. If I were to say I want to go to Dallas, Texas, and I were to give you a map, that's that thing you fold out that nobody uses anymore.
I think I've seen one of those.
And they wouldn't do that. But if you had to find it on a map, the first thing you would need to know is where you're at right now, but you would need to know where you want to go.
Good point.
In order to chart it out. So the very first thing in starting a retirement plan is to find out what you want your retirement to look like. And we're going to find out that that's going to lead to some other things. But here's what I want you to do. You say, hey, maybe they're talking sense to us. We don't have a plan. It's spelled P-L-A-N. We know that, but we really don't know how to spell a retirement plan. That's what we major in, and I want you to see from this show that it's much bigger than just money. Because some of my wealthiest clients, or some of the wealthiest people that we run across, Rebecca, are some of the most unhappy people.
Really?
And some of the people who have what would, if we were to put it on a net worth statement, would have an amount that would be very, very, very low. But some of the happiest people, because they have a plan, they know what they want to do. That's where we start. We start with a blank piece of paper with what you want your retirement to look like. Now, if you don't have a plan and you have a stack of statements, then you need to work with somebody who's going to help you go bigger than just money, and to the point where they help you put together a retirement plan that you're going to be able to live with, that you're going to be able to love, and you're going to be able to enjoy for the rest of your lives. If you're married together, if you're single and you're going through life, with that person that you're going through, or if you're just by yourself, a plan that you're going to chart out, this is what we intend to do. That's where we start. But really, it doesn't start with that, Rebecca. It starts with them picking up the phone. And you've got to call us, 866-709-1462, or you can use the QR code that's on the screen, or dial 866-709-1462. Sometimes we get slammed with calls, so you might get a busy signal. Call back, or they'll call you back, but let us know. Reach out to us, and we can help you by start building your plan, by finding out what you want it to look like.
Absolutely. And like Tom said, all you have to do is call that number, and that first appointment really is no risk, no obligation whatsoever. It might just be a second look. You might be right on track, and he'll tell you that as well. When we come back, we're going to talk about the B word, budget. Do you have one, and how it can be more painless than you think? Stay with us.
As a good saver, you've been putting away money during your working years. Studies find that the biggest fear of retirees is running out of money. Market volatility isn't just the downward movement of stock prices, it's the size and frequency of change. The more dramatic the ups and downs, the higher the volatility. This can put savers who are newly retired or a few years away from being retired at greater risk. Today's generation of retirees is not receiving traditional pensions as our parents or grandparents did. Instead, we have retirement accounts such as 401ks or 403bs. These accounts typically expose your money to market risk. The last thing you want right before retirement is to lose a portion of the money you need for income. But how do you turn these accounts into a retirement income? Is it safe to keep all your retirement money sitting in the stock market? The last thing you want is to lose a portion of the money you need for income due to market loss. By working with a financial professional, you can learn how to turn a portion of your savings into an income stream for life and income for the life of your spouse if you're married. We all have moments in our lives when we wish we had taken action sooner. Don't let procrastination reign on your retirement parade. Act now before it's too late. Please call our office to set up your no-cost, no-obligation retirement income review today.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. We are talking about your retirement and specifically your plan. It always starts with a plan. Let's talk about budget. I don't really like to, and a lot of ladies probably don't. When you look at what you're actually spending per month on food or clothes, it can be very eye-opening. Do most people who come to you already have a budget, or is that something that you can also help with?
Oh, I like questions where I have an absolute. If you're sitting out there and you say, we don't have a budget, well, you are normal, okay? Most people, when they come in, that's one of the, well, let me tell you why it's the first thing we start with. We just talked about what does your retirement look like. So if you're going to have a plan and you want to know what it, you first know what it's going to look like. Is there going to be travel involved? Are we going to move somewhere else? All of those other things. What's it going to take? What's it going to take in the way of money? So then you start putting together, and I want to be really careful here. We're very careful on this show to point out that your situation is different than anybody else's. Your budget is different than anybody else's. Do you want to travel and take a huge trip of 2 or 3 weeks or cruise a lot, and you want to do all of that on an annual basis? No, we want to just do 1 or 2, and then at the first part when we first start going. But your budget is going to then be put together to fund what your plan looks like and what you want your retirement to look like. And the best way to do that is we have a budget sheet that we work through with people, because most of you don't have one. Don't, apologize to your partner for hitting them on the knee or slapping them right now. Say, see, we needed a budget, okay? Most of you don't. We help you do that. That's progress, okay? But we know what you're spending now, and then we give you another blank sheet, and that helps you determine what are the changes that are going to take place when you go through retirement. A lot of people say, well, I won't be driving to 𝐒𝐤𝐤𝐞 every day.
Yeah.
No, but when it comes to travel, you might be traveling to Europe every year, or to Australia 1 year. So we need to know what you're spending now, and then we can look item by item. How do you eat an elephant? You eat it 1 bite at a time. We can go item by item and say, this is what your budget needs to project in retirement, and we work through. Now let's take the house. Because a lot of people in California right now, currently, I am holding 4 people, 7 different couples, clients, money that they've sold their house here in California, and it's no secret. They're wanting to leave California. They're wanting to move somewhere else. So we've got that money in something very safe because, Rebecca, do you know what the market's going to do tomorrow or today?
I don't have a crystal ball, just like
nobody
you don't.
does. So if you're going to need that money in a short basis, you don't need to invest that money into, you need to make a little bit, but you don't need to invest that money into something where you're going to lose very much money. But the question would be, like in retirement, when we get this dream and we try to build the budget is, are you going to live here in the house that you've lived in for 30 or 40 years, raised your kids, or are you going to move to North Carolina? That was just my most recent client moved to North Carolina. Or are you going to move to Florida or Tennessee or Texas, or you pick one of the hot states that are out there, okay? Now, I'm not talking about temperature. I'm talking about people just wanting to move somewhere.
Right.
So that's the first thing. Are you going to move somewhere else? If you're not going to move somewhere else, are you going to downsize? Because particularly the ladies speak to me, Rebecca, and they say, you know, we've got this 2,800 square foot house, this 3,200 square foot house. Or the guy says, I thought I wanted a half acre of land, and now I don't want any land.
Right.
Okay?
Condo.
Right. I want a condo or something, and I want to downsize, or I want to move closer to the beach. So those are the questions we ask you in that first part, so that we're able to build your budget. Now, what that budget is a target. If my son that you know, Travis, has been on the show with us before, was a college baseball pitcher. And he always points out to clients, I had to know when I was standing on the mound, I didn't have to know where my left fielder was or my right fielder was. They were responsible to be in their place, but I had to know where the catcher was, okay? Because the catcher's back there behind home plate where the batter and the umpire, where they stay as well. And the one thing Travis had to know was the mark he was throwing to. That's why we need to help you put together a retirement budget. And then you're going to be able to say, do we have enough money to do it? But let's just talk about the budget in this segment. That budget, what will it include? Are you going to want to help the grandkids a lot, okay? And are you helping the grandkids too much? Remember, you're the goose that lays the golden egg. And if we kill the goose, then there are no golden eggs for anybody. So you got to watch how much you're passing along. And I've advocated on this show, passing along your money to your kids before you pass away so that you can enjoy it with them, or you can go places with them. But those are the things that are behind the scene. And then we start moving it into how much money do we need? Where's the catcher's mitt? Where's the target? Where's the bullseye? Call it what you want. What are we shooting at? And we talked about in this whole show, we've talked about building a plan. Those are so elementary, just very basic things you need to put into a retirement plan, and we help you do that. You say, well, I can do that. Right. And most of you haven't. I know by statistics that it's a huge, in school you could have a passing grade with the score of people. It's over 70% don't have a budget and don't have an idea of what they're spending. That's the kind of thing we help you with, because then when we come back, we're going to talk about, do you have enough money to meet that budget? That's how we know. We start with what you want to do. We start with how much that's going to cost. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, do you have enough money? That might help you decide whether it's time to retire or do I need to work 2 or 3 more years. So this is how it's helpful to you in shoe leather. But the shoe leather you need to use right now is to stand up and go get your phone if it's not right there by you, or to scan the QR code on the phone. You dial us 866-709-1462 and get on our calendars. We have 4 offices. In San Diego, we have an office. In Anaheim, our main office. In Chino, in Glendale. And one of our 6 all-star advisors will sit down with you and follow this pattern to build you a retirement plan. But the shoe leather you need to use right now is get up, get the phone, dial us 866-709-1462.
And we'll be right back. More with Tom Mosley and Right on the Money and your retirement dreams coming true. Stay with us.
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. After nearly a lifetime on the job, you should be rewarded for all the time you spent working. Whether that's crossing off items on your bucket list, learning a new passion, or rekindling the love of an old one. After all, Life isn't over when you stop working. It's the start of an all-new chapter, the one where you're the writer and you get to choose how your story will go. A way to achieve that is by having a clear financial plan to sustain your golden years. The biggest fear most retirees have is if they'll have enough money to maintain the lifestyle they've always enjoyed. Having a plan to help protect you against the curveballs life often throws will help to maintain your lifestyle. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is a retirement expert, of course, a fiduciary, not a big box, not a rubber stamp. You are your own person. You are like no one else on this planet. And happy 28-year anniversary in this business.
I've been doing this 28 years. I started when I was 4. And actually, I was more than that, okay? But yeah, you're right. 28th anniversary just celebrated a few days ago.
Amazing. And you have learned so much because you were there with the tech bubble popping and the housing market in the 2008 and the 2009. And I think that's when you told me you decided then and there, you must protect your hard-earned money. The word risk and retirement do not go together. So how do you know if you're going to have enough income? How do you know how long you're going to live? It seems like a roll of the dice for most people.
Well, it is a roll of the dice for most people because they don't have a plan.
Right.
They haven't said, like we talked about in the first segment, what do you want it to look like? They haven't said how much is it going to cost for it to look like. And remember when they handed us the statement in that first segment and we put it right here?
Yeah.
Now we bring this in and we say, okay, these are the assets. These are the 401ks. These are the 403bs, the IRAs, the SEP IRAs, the pensions. This is what your Social Security looks like. This is what the rental houses look like. All of those things then come into the assets, and too many times it's fire ready aim.
Yeah.
And they start looking at the assets first.
Right.
But you've got to aim for that goal out there, and then you get ready by looking at the budget, and now you fire by looking at what we call, you've mentioned it already on the show, this is the lumberyard.
Right.
How are you going to build, we call it a retirement blueprint, how are you going to build the house you're going to live in retirement? You're going to use the lumberyard that you've stacked up in the 401k statements and the 403b and the 457s and all of 4s, okay? And all the IRAs and all of those things. You built all of those things, and now you need to look at that and say, where do we put that? Like you mentioned so adeptly, you said, how much risk am I taking in this?
Right.
Because the risk I'm taking that my 26-year-old daughter should be taking, totally different if I'm 66 and I'm thinking about walking out the door of retirement. Because when you walk out the door of retirement, you are self-employed. Now, nobody ever calls it that. But from your lumberyard, you have to then pay yourself a paycheck. Now, the first thing we would do is, in looking at do you have enough assets, is we would say, what's your Social Security look like? Okay, all right, do you have a pension? Oops, don't have one, parents did, but you don't. Do we have a pension? Social Security pensions. Do we have rental units? Are the rental units causing us to pull our hair out?
Yeah.
If they're not yet, okay, what I find a lot of times, Rebecca, is my couples together, and the guy is the one that's able to handle the rental units and go in and paint them and help over engineer the recarpeting and things like that. But when the guy passes away, the wife wants to sell them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they will sell them in a fire sale if they're not careful because they just don't want to deal with them. So what kind of assets have you created that can be built into a plan? And I mentioned all 6 of these things early, but that income, it starts with income. How do I turn the lumberyard, the lump sum of all of these statements, how do I turn them into a flow of income that's going to fund my dream retirement, that's going to give me the right kind of budget? How do I take this lumberyard and make that transition? What kind of income do I need is already going to be determined. How much can I get from what I've built in my lumberyard? And then we go and then we look at inflation. Again, it's something I've been talking about for 28 years because like you said, I personally lived through the Jimmy Carter days where I got that great home loan in 1979 at 15.3% interest. You think they're high now? It was 15.3% interest. And I know what inflation can do to your retirement plan. It's a silent killer. And then your investments, and we've talked about risk. They don't need to be as risky generally as you've done for 40 years. And you've been successful with it for 40 years because you built a great lumberyard. Now's the time to turn it around and watch what risk level, and even take some of your money and maybe lower the risk level in taxes. Oh my goodness, if you've got $1 million, you don't have $1 million. You've got $1 million if it's in an IRA. If one of these is an IRA or a 401k statement, that's got to go through the U.S. tax system before you can spend it. So you don't have that much money in healthcare and legacy. That's the sixth thing that we look at. That's a retirement plan. If somebody hands you something that's just got numbers on it, that's a statement. A retirement plan, a retirement blueprint is what we build, and I'll hold up the back of this from a blank piece of paper, because as you can see from this show, everything that has your name on it is blank right now. We have to know your dreams. We have to know what that's going to cost, and then we have to know what kind of lumberyard you're going to give us so we can build the house that you can live in through retirement and put together that blueprint. But your job is pretty simple. Your job is just to collect a few things and to call 866-709-1462. You see it on the screen, 866-709-1462. You are that close to making, my dad always used to say, getting started is 50% of everything. You are that close.
Yeah, you're right.
I always think about that when I start shaving. Okay. Oh boy, I hate to shave, all right? Maybe you do too. You are that close to getting started on getting a personalized retirement blueprint. All you've got to do to get it started, call that number, use the QR code, 866-709-1462. Get on our calendar. We will help you in any way we possibly can to build a plan for you that will make a great retirement for you.
And I really want to reiterate, this first appointment truly is no cost, no obligation. They'll run all of your information through a third-party software. You will see in black and white where you are, what your true risk is, the fees you're paying. We haven't even gotten to that. We need to do that next week, Tom.
I call them fleas.
Fleas, yes, the fleas on your dog, but the fees. So this is truly eye-opening and a wonderful opportunity. Give us a call, 866-709-1462. Use that QR code, and we hope to see you again next week.